That's coming. Bart's gonna work on it. He's gonna fix it. On. Good morning, good morning. Shabbat Shalom. It's on. Wait. Take my notes out first. Okay, good morning. Okay, announcements. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom, welcome. I want to say a very special welcome to Dr. Bob Barnhart, who's here with us today, all the way from Fountain View, Playa Vista, and Bob is responsible for the live streaming, and we're really grateful for that because there are people, there are people all over the world sitting in their pajamas learning Torah this morning, right? It's a machaya. And I get these emails during the week saying, "Sorry, I wasn't in Shul Shabbos, but I watched you on TV." So I'm waiting for the day like nobody shows up, and then the thing's going to say like 800 views. You know, I'm sorry I didn't wake up. It's on. I think it's on. Does the guy say it's not on? I get no kick. It was not on, really? Did I say anything? Then I'll give the same talk over again. Great. Okay, couple of quick announcements following our learning together. There's shul, there's Tat Shabbat, and there's library minyan. And there's the main sanctuary service, and there's a bar mitzvah, a lovely kid. There's a baby naming today. It's a lovely celebrations. We are going to continue learning through, the 21st of July. Okay, so we will learn, Torah study will go through 21st of July. Then from the 28th of July, we'll take a hiatus through the beginning of September, okay? And you can all enjoy quiet Shabbos morning. You can watch reruns, actually. Good thing about the Torah is that we go back over it, so you could. What did he say last year? Oh my God, he said the same thing. You know, so you could. Yeah, no, there's no advertising for the bill. We should though. That's actually, we should do that. That would be actually really good. And what's it? Parsha group is going to meet today, right? Okay. Let me just check this first. Make our shechianu. Not freeze. I want you. It's actually. It should be okay. All right. This weekend's my anniversary. 39 years with Nina. Yeah. So the best story is we got married. Remember the Ambassador Hotel, Oliver Shalom? So we got married at the Ambassador Hotel. Beautiful outside garden, beautiful indoor. We wanted. Our parents sat with us and they said, "What do you want for a wedding?" And we said, "We want to invite everybody we love." So we had a very simple wedding. I think we served a chicken leg. That's all we served. But we had 400 people there and a wonderful band. I mean, the Reuven was, what? And one chicken leg for the whole group. It was great. No, but the great thing was this. So my dad koshered the shop. We had an Orthodox hashgacha for the wedding, and my dad koshered the bakery shop and made all the stuff for the bakery. And Rabbi Schreut, Aleph Shalom, a great Rav, came and spent 3 days eating my dad's Danish, watching him to make sure it was all kosher, right? I mean, the man, what a beautiful man. He came and he must have eaten 3 dozen Danish. And it was just a wonderful thing to do. So the great thing is that the night before I'm the oldest, so the first one to get married in the family. So the night before the wedding, about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, Mom turns over in bed, and Dad's not there. And she gets scared, like, where is he? Like, the wedding's the next day, where is he? So she goes, looks in the bathroom, he's not there. She looks in the living room, he's not there. She checks everywhere in the house, Dad's nowhere, right? So she picks up the phone and calls the shop. And Dad picks up the phone, 3 o'clock in the morning. And she said, where are you? And he said, I got nervous, there wouldn't be enough, you know? So I'm running 1,800 brownies, you know, I'll be home in an hour, right? Like, what do you do when you're nervous? You know, you go to the bakery and make 1,800 brownies, right? It was wonderful. There was a 6-tier wedding cake. Our friend Bernie Ginsberg, Oliver Shalom, who is a great engineer, had to come and make sure the damn thing wouldn't fall over, right? If he could get the Apollo rocket to go up, he could keep my wedding cake steady. So 39 years ago, we got married at the Ambassador Hotel. So it's a nice celebration. And we're still married. Imagine that. You know. What? No, I have friends who've been married that long, but to 6 different women, you know. So, so I'm one of the few people I know that, like, you get used to each other, you know, on to mess things up. Anyway, so that was that. And then... you know, this week, I would say one more thing, and this is a personal note, and you don't need to listen to this because it's not part of the Torah study, but this week, Rabbi Farkas and I sent out a political message. We do this very rarely. We've only done 4 or 5 of them in the years we've been working, 10 years we've been working together. But there's certain events during the course of the week when we get a sense that the community wants to hear from their rabbis. And what we typically try to do is to try to raise the conversation. We believe that it's important for citizens of a democracy to hear multiple points of view. And we believe that much of the political discourse that you get on television is just people shouting at you. And that often when people say, I want my rabbi's opinion on a particular issue, what they really mean is, I want my rabbi to agree with me on this particular issue. So if I send out something that is slightly to the left of somebody or slightly to the right, I get yelled at. So this time I got yelled at by everybody. It was really interesting. Got yelled at by left-wing people and yelled at by right-wing people, and everybody was upset with this, except me and Rabbi Farkas. Because we said what we wanted. No, I don't want to take comments. I don't want to just, I appreciate it, but we try very hard, because I really do believe that we need to listen to each other. And that doesn't get heard a lot. That's in a democracy. And I know that people have visceral means from the kishkas, responses to policies, right? There were people who had visceral antagonism toward President Obama. And I understand why, and I understand how they feel. I understand what it made them do. And there are people who equally have visceral responses to President Trump, and I understand why, and I know what it makes them do. But none of that's helpful in a democracy when we have to have rational, reasoned conversation. Now, here we have a very interesting set of issues. If you can step away from all the yelling and screaming and shouting and calling Nazi, 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 and look at the situation, right? We are living in a globalized economy in a globalized world. National borders mean less and less and less in this world, right? And there are large populations of people moving around. And the question is, what should be the immigration policy of a prosperous democracy? When should borders be open? When should borders be closed? Who should be allowed in? Who shouldn't be allowed in? Right? I was standing in line at some place, I think it was actually Dodger Stadium of all places, and some guy was screaming, you know, about immigrants, and he used all kinds of epithets that I can't use in synagogue, you know, effing, immigrants, legal, illegal, they're all the same, they're coming to take our country. You know, that's unhelpful. First of all, we're all immigrants. We're all either the children of immigrants or the grandchildren of immigrants or the great-grandchildren. Even the president came from Germany. His name was Drumpf when they came from Germany 2 generations ago. That's not who we are, you know. So the question is, what should be a rational, effective compassionate, reasonable policy of immigration to this country, and how do you handle, what do you do with the masses of people who arrive at the borders of this country asking to come in? That's a reasonable question to ask, I think. And I think it has there are some facts that we need to adduce, right? This morning in Paul Krugman's column, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist who writes in the New York Times, he says there's a big debate among economists about whether the presence of low-wage immigrants depresses wages for working-class Americans. There's a question about that. Bret Stephens, a right-wing writer for the New York Times, wrote an article this week in which he said the country is underpopulated. That's hard to believe when you're on the 405, right? But the idea that we don't really have enough workers, and I can tell you at certain places that's absolutely, my son works in Silicon Valley, and everybody he works for is an immigrant from India. Everyone he works with, all the guys who do all of the coding, that is the establishment of websites, are all immigrants here on H-1 visas from India, right? Because we don't have enough computer engineers to run Silicon Valley. So these are, instead of screaming at each other, let's sit and talk to each other about what are the competing values here. And here is where I get into trouble with left and with right, because I'm a centrist, and I'm going to hold that position until you kill me, because I think that I believe in left-wing compassion, and I believe in right-wing rationality. Right? I told you, I'm the Wizard of Oz of politics, right? The left has no heart, has no brains, the right has no heart, and nobody has courage, right? I mean, that's the Wizard of Oz, right? No heart, no brains, no courage. And you have to bring both to the establishment of policy, especially a policy like this. To be all compassionate, you will end up being uncompassionate. Because if you admit millions and millions and millions, if you just open the borders and let them come, you will depress wages for the working class. That's true. I mean, even Krugman admitted to that. So you have to be compassionate, but it has to be a smart compassionate. And on the other side, if you just say hard-hearted, no immigrants ever, period, we have enough people in this country, that's going to kill the economy too. Because then you're not going to bring in fresh minds to renew the innovation that is American democracy, that is American technology, that is American economy. I mean, so we're trying very hard to offer that next level, that higher level of political discourse. And the cost of that is that I get screamed at by everybody because they didn't see what they wanted to see in the letter that I sent. So if you were one of the people that send me one of those angry letters, thank you. I appreciate it. No, very seriously. I appreciate the fact that you read it. I appreciate the fact that you responded. Usually I write back a thank you, right? And what I'm going to urge you to do is stop yelling at me, go back and look up the articles that are at the bottom. Because you'll find there are about a dozen articles that we gathered, that Rabbi Farkas gathered, from The Atlantic, from the Wall Street Journal, from U.S. News, from the New York Times, and the President's own statement. Okay? And I think that if you read those, you'll see that there is a rational debate that needs to start in this country about this issue. And that's what we are going to do with politics at Valley Beth Shalom. Now, if you want to go to a synagogue where everybody agrees with you, there are lots of them in town. And just call afterwards, email me, and I'll tell you. You tell me your politics, and I'll tell you where you'll find a rabbi who will tell you you're right, or always right. Of course you're right. In fact, I'm farther to that level than you are. You want left? I got left. You want right? I got right. You want to think? Come to VBS. Please open the Chumash. I needed to say that. I'm sorry if that offended anybody. Today we're going to read the saddest Torah portion in the book. Honest to God. This is the saddest one. Page 880. Page 880. Page 880. The book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, the book that we're reading now in the Torah, the fourth book of the Torah, is a guided tour through the Midbar, through the wilderness of the human condition. It is a guided tour through all of the elements that make being a human being tough. So 3 weeks ago, we saw, as soon as they begin the journey from Sinai to the Promised Land, you have this eruption of appetite, desire, pettiness, Give us food. We don't like the manna. We want meat. Give us the food we ate in Egypt. We ate free in Egypt. Why do you make it so difficult for us? You have the smallness. Remember, we talked about this, the contrast between Moses' lofty vision of the holy personality and the just society. This contrast between the sacred vision of sacred living and people's desires. We want meat. We want just pleasures of the body, pleasures of the now. And the contrast between his lofty vision and the lowly earthiness of this people. And somehow, all these years at Mount Sinai, talking to God, all the miracles that they witnessed in Egypt, hasn't changed the people at all. You have this terrible sense of, the whole project is futile. They'll never change. And then you turn the page and you get to the story of the spies. That was 2 weeks ago, right? Remember? You send 12 guys into the land. They come back and they all say, it is the promised land that our ancestors left for us. It is the promised land. It is a land of milk and honey. But 10 of them say, we'll never have it. We'll never get there. We're not worthy. We were bugs in their sight, and that's what we are to ourselves. We are bugs. We don't deserve the promises. The fear, the smallness, the lack of courage, the lack of place in the world. And you have this terrible, terrible sense of, you see, watching this people shrink in front of your eyes. Their souls shriveling. And that's when God says to them, 38 years you'll wander in the desert, the next generation will be ready. And then you turn the page to last week's Torah portion. It keeps getting worse, right? And you get rebellion. You get Korach, right? Korach, who's Moses' first cousin. And they rise up to kill him. And the elders of the community rise up to kill him. The tribal elder, nobody wants to follow. There's no coherence. There's no solidarity. There's jealousy. There's rage. There's anger. There's self-destructive. The self-destructive impulses of this people are so powerful. And if you're not depressed by this point in the Torah, you're not reading carefully enough. This is depressing Torah. Because what you got to say, I wonder if he'll make it. I wonder if he'll make it out of the desert. Because one by one, everything that gives Moses a sense of himself betrays him, right? His family betrays him. His sister and brother, like kibbutz, they start making fun of his wife, right? His family betrays him. His tribe, the Levites, betray him. They rebel against him. The tribal elders that he's gathered to lead the people, they betray him. The people betray him. And in today's Torah portion, God's going to betray him. And at the end, you're going to wonder, are we going to make it? Are we going to get there? Are we going to make it to the promised land? Are we going to die out here in the desert? Because it's so dark. This is such a dark Torah. That dark Torah, this is the human condition. This is the brutal honesty of Torah, telling you if you're going to bring the world from Egypt to Canaan, from the house of bondage to the promised land, you've got to go through this wilderness. All of you who are utopians, and I grew up with utopia. I went to school with you. My generation was utopians. My generation was power to the people. We wore flowers in our hair, and we were going to make Woodstock nation. And what we didn't understand was this, that the people you have to make your utopia out of are real people. If you can make utopia out of theoretical people, it's not so hard. Because the theoretical people are all generous and kind and good and giving and loving and sweet. They're never jealous. They're never angry. They're never craving. The theoretical people are easy to deal with, right? That's why everybody can be a great leader sitting in their study. Right? If you sit in my living room, boy, you could be a great rabbi, It's only when you get in front of real people. How do you deal with the real people? And the Torah wants you to understand that, yeah, you can build utopia. I promise you. You can get to the promised land. But you got to know what you're dealing with. Otherwise, you're going to end up disillusioned. And this is the wilderness of disillusionment. And today, it gets to the bottom. The good news is after today, it's easier, okay? Today, you're going to hit what they call in AA rock bottom. Because today, we're going to meet the worst, the one fact of the human condition that is incontestable, unnegotiable, You can't find any harmony with it. It's the fact of death. This is a Torah portion about death. In this Torah portion, Aaron and Miriam are both going to die. Moses is going to be told he's going to die. In this Torah portion, this is the one. And what does death do to us? What does it do to our courage to live? How do you transcend the sense that if my life is this short and it's this limited and my mortality is so sure, what's worth investing myself in? And it begins with a very curious law, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with anything. And it's a very weird law. In fact, this law, it's called Chukat. And in Torah language, chuk, is a law that has no sense. It's a completely nonsensical law. Now, a lot of people think much of Judaism is about nonsensical laws. But I can build you an ethical case for most of Jewish observance. I can tell you why you should keep kosher, and I can tell you why you should make Shabbos, and I can tell you why you should give tzedakah, and I should tell you why you should support the community. But there's certain laws like this one that even the rabbis said, we don't know. Doesn't make any sense at all. But I think it does, and I'll show you why. Take a look with me. Page 880. We okay? Everybody good so far? The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, this is the ritual law. Zot Chukat HaTorah. 880. 880. Okay? 880. Chukat. Okay? Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the chok. Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow. I never thought I'd see a purple cow. I never hoped to see one. But I can tell you one thing now. A red cow. What's a red cow? A cow that's all, not really red. It's sort of amber, right? You know what I'm talking about? A gingy cow, right? Without blemish, in which there's no defect, on which no yoke has been laid. Now the rabbis go to town and they say, what does God want? A red cow. And the rabbis understood this. They got the insight. What's a red cow? How red does it have to be? What if it has a white spot? No good. What if it has a black stripe? No good. What do I want? I want a cow that's entirely the same color. Monochrome cow. How much not red are you allowed on the cow? Answered the rabbis, 2 hairs. No. How many hairs on a cow? That's right. A lot, I'm told. Right? Every time I've been close to a cow, I can tell you a lot of hair on a cow hide, right? And the entire cow hide, only 2 not red hairs. Okay? That's the law. Okay? You'll give it to Eleazar the priest. It'll be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. The priest shall take some of the blood with his fingers, sprinkle it 7 times to the front of the tent of meeting. The cow will be burned in his sight. Hide, flesh, blood will be burned, its dung included. The priest will take cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson stuff, throw it into the fire, consuming the cow. You get this now? You watching? Now we have roasted cow. Roasted red cow, right? Okay? The priest wash his garments and bathe his body in water. After that, he may re-enter the camp, but he'll be impure. And this is one of the things about the law that makes no sense, is why it is that if the cow makes people pure, why the guy who's preparing it stays impure. But leave that out. Don't worry about it. He who performed the burning washed his garments in water, bathe his body in water. He'll be impure till evening. A man who is pure shall gather up the ashes of the cow, deposit it outside the camp in a pure place, kept for water of lustration. What's lustration? Verves. Let me tell you what it really is. We have sacrificial worship, right? To engage in sacrificial worship, you had to be in a position of purity, tahorah. Not cleanliness, but this is a ritual technicality. What makes you impure? Contact with a corpse of any kind. A dead person, a dead animal makes you impure. What happens if you're on your way to offer your birthday sacrifice at the temple and you stumble across a dead crocodile? Could happen, right? You are now in a process, or whatever, cat, dog, squirrel, whatever, right? You are now in a process, in a position of being impure. How do you regain purity after you've come into contact with that which is dead? You use the water of the cow. Right? What happens? You take the cow ashes, You dissolve it in water, and it becomes magical purifying water. Everybody get this? You don't get this? You take the red cow, you burn the red cow, you take the ashes, you put it in a jar, you fill it up with water. You know, they say that, a gallon of water per one cow, right? You swish it up, and now when Howard comes to me and says, I was on my way to the temple to offer my birthday sacrifice, and I tripped over a dead squirrel, right? Or a dead crocodile, whatever, right? What do? You say, come here, and I spritz him with cow water, and now he's pure. Doesn't that make sense? Good. Okay, keep going. Just in case you didn't know, right? It is for purification. He who gathers the ashes, the cow will wash, will be impure. This is a permanent law. And here we get the law, 882. Ready? This is important. I know it sounds a little arcane. He who touches the corpse of a human being shall be impure for 7 days. He shall purify himself with the ashes, with the cow water, on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and he'll be pure. And if he fails to purify himself, he's not pure. And pure means you're allowed to participate in the collective worship, in the communal worship. Whoever touches a corpse, the body of a person died, does not purify himself, defiles the Lord's tabernacle. You can't come into the holy place. That person will be cut off from Israel. You can't even come into the camp, since the water of lustration was not dashed on him. This is the ritual. When somebody dies in a tent, whoever enters the tent will be impure 7 days. Every open vessel is impure. You got a Coke bottle that's open. The guy died in the room. You can't drink from that Coke bottle, right? Right? Anyone who touches a person who killed or died naturally, human bones, So any contact with death makes you impure. In order to become pure, you need magic cow water. Right? Everybody get that? Okay. That makes sense? Okay, goodbye. Why did the Torah tell us this? What's a strange thing?
First of all, you can't find a red cow.
That's interesting. No, that's very interesting. No, stop it. That's a very interesting comment.
What about the newborn
So,
cows that's pinkish?
no, that doesn't count. You got to wait till it's a year old. All right, so I think this is an interesting interpretation. My son Yonah, I want to credit him because he taught this once to me, and he's a very smart kid. He looked at me because he's a very bright kid. Only a kid would tell you this. Just that. He said, Abba, there's no such thing. I said, what do you mean there's no such thing? The Torah says. I said, Abba, there's no such thing. I said, what do you mean there's no such thing? He said, look, even a cow which is like, really red, is going to have more than 2 white hairs or black hairs, right? There's no such thing. Now, what does it mean there's no such thing? What is the red cow? The red cow is the solution to death. Death changes us. Death changes the way we look at the world. Death changes the way we look at ourselves. Death brings us low. Death makes us say that life is unlivable. Death makes us feel as lonely as you can feel in the world. And every one of us wants magic cow water to make it go away. Make it go away. Tell me the magic words, Rabbi, that I won't feel so depressed that my loved one is gone. Tell me the magic words. Say the magic formula. Make it go away. Make me easy again. Make it go away. And the Torah says, I know that's what you want. I know you want magic to make it go away. But here's the truth. It doesn't. This is the human condition. And learning to live with the reality that each one of us is mortal, that not one of us has an infinite number of tomorrows, that none one of our loved ones have an infinite number. That's part of the calculus of being a human being. And if you think that somewhere in the world there's some way to make it all better, some fairy godmother solution to the essential truth of the human condition, I can tell you there is. Go find me a red cow. There's no such thing. This is how the Torah begins this discussion today. I know you want out of this. I know that it's impossible. And I know because we've been together, many of us together, at moments of grieving and mourning. And at that moment, it's just impossible. It's impossible to imagine a tomorrow. It's impossible to imagine life going on. You're insulted by the fact that the sun rises in the morning and everybody else goes back to work and you have to live in a world without the person who filled your soul and your heart. It's impossible. And you say, please, take it away. I don't want to live in such a world. And the Torah says, I know that's what you want. We have to find a different way because there's no magic spell to make it go away. And this is going to be the problem of the Torah portion today. Take a look on page 883. The Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon. Turn the page. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Who's Miriam? Who's Miriam in the Torah? What do we know about Miriam in the Torah? Not a lot, but enough to tell us just a hint about who she really was. Moses' sister, right? When's the first time we meet her? 3 months after Moses is born, his mama puts him in a basket and sends him down the Nile. And it's the sister, it's Miriam, who says, I'll go keep an eye on him. And when Bat Paro, the daughter of Pharaoh, fishes him out of the Nile and says, I'll take him as a son, she's the one who says, let me bring you a wet nurse who will nurse him for you. So she's the one who reconnects him with his mama. And then, when do we meet her again? He goes away for 40 years and comes back, and we meet her again. Right, they cross the Red Sea. And what is Miriam's... Moses, if you read the story, it's very interesting. It says Moses began to sing, but that's not really what happened. Moses is mute. It's Miriam who begins to sing. Miriam is the one who begins to sing and lead the people in singing and teach the people how to sing. What is Miriam's function? Now, there's very little in the Torah, and I want to stop and just point this out. There's a wonderful new discipline, academic, scholarly discipline of feminist interpretation of the Torah. And the basic premise of feminist interpretation of the Torah is that we only have one Torah. We have the Torah of Moses. We're missing the other one, which is the Torah of Miriam. You know, there were 602,000 Israelite men at Mount Sinai, which means there must have been 602,000 Israelite women at Mount Sinai. Where's their voice? There's a beautiful poem by a contemporary poet who said, you went to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. I stayed in the camp with the baby. I was nursing the baby. You heard God's voice from the top of the mountain. I heard it through the cries of the baby as the baby was nursing. Where's the voice of the women in this? And we have just the hints of it. Just the hints of it. And to show you how skewed this is, look at that text we just read. Miriam died there and was buried. Really? No funeral? No mourning period? No collective recognition? So the Torah gives us a hint. The Midrash will pick up on this. The community was without water. Miriam is Maryam, bitter water, right? The water. She's water. Now, again, use your mythic imagination. Why would water be a symbol of womanhood, of femininity? Think of the well. The water. The Midrash is wherever the people were with Miriam, there was a well that magically appeared. The well as a symbol of. The well is the symbol of Miriam. Miriam is the symbol of the well. The well and life, sustenance. You're born into water. Water fills the woman as she births a baby. This is all part of the symbolism here. Suppose for just a minute we play just a little bit of a literary game. Right? Just a literary game. You have Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe, and they form a triumvirate of leadership. Miriam is his emotional life. Miriam is the embodiment and personification of Moses' emotions. Moses is a man cut off from his emotions because he was taken away from his mother when he was a baby, okay? And he was and cut off from his emotions. She is the embodiment of his emotional life. She is the emotional life of the Israelite people. That's why she's the one who sings. This is the depth, the well, the depths of life, the depths of passion, the depths of happiness, the depths of joy, the depths of sadness. She is his emotional life, and when she dies, he's cut off. Because look at the next thing that happens. The communities without water, they joined against Moses and Aaron, and the people quarreled with Moses, saying, if only we'd perish when our brothers perished, the instant Lord. Why have you brought us in the wilderness to die with our beasts out here? Why'd you make us leave Egypt? His sister just died, and they're ragging on him. Why did you take us out of Egypt? Why did you? What is he going to do? What would you do? I mean, on a good day, this is hard to deal with. But deal with it while you're sitting shiva, right? You're sitting shiva. And why did you bring us? Why did you bring us to this wretched place? The place with no grain or figs or wine or pomegranate, any water to drink. Wine. Kvetch. Moses and Aaron came to the tent of the meeting, and they fell on their face in the presence of the Lord. And the Lord said, you and your brother take the rod, assemble the community before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water. Thus you'll produce water for them. So he took the rod. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation, 885, top of the page. Listen, you rebels. And by the way, in case you missed the connection, look at, if you know a little bit of Hebrew, please learn some Hebrew. Vayikalu Moshe ve'Aaron et ha'kahal el penei ha'sela. They gathered the community in front of the sela, in front of the rock, right? Vayomru lehem. They said, Shimuna hamorim. The word hamorim, which means you rebellious ones. But if you look at the word hamorim, yeah, mem, resh, vav, mem, spells Miriam. Miriam. It's the same thing. He's so consumed with the loss of his sister, who has always been his connection to his feelings. She's always been the one who calmed him down when he was full of rage. She's the one that reminded him that his vulnerability was an asset, not a detriment. She was the one who told him he could do this.
But maybe their panic was over her loss.
Yeah.
Because the water is the activating agent for the ashes, for the sota.
Yeah, everything.
Miriam's the activating agent
Yeah.
for Moshe. So while they're trying to rebel against him, it's not really.
Yeah.
It's their
That.
loss.
So there's a beautiful midrash that says that. Although that's, I think, way too generous, Sherry. It's because you have a good heart, and you don't have the cynical heart of a hard-boiled, nasty, mean congregational rabbi anymore. You've lost it. I know.
This is why it works so well. Right?
See, this is my Miriam and my Aaron. I want you to see.
It's so true.
It's.
It's
It's
their
beautiful.
expression of the grief.
Yeah.
It's all their anger. When you think of a human being,
Yeah. Okay.
people express grief differently.
That's beautiful.
That's their
So the people are grieving her too, and that's what this is about.
Right, because they're grieving the activating agent
Yeah.
dying, and they're afraid that he will collapse without her.
Yeah,
And
that's
this
a
is their
beautiful.
anger.
That's a beautiful way to put it. That's a very generous,
Although
sweet.
Rabbi Gilman, I know, does not agree with me.
No, I'm glad you have such sympathy for a dead bigot. This is the woman
Wait.
who went around the camp arguing that Moses married a black woman,
Yeah.
and because of that,
Yeah.
she was stricken
Yeah.
with leprosy. What kind of feelings are those?
Okay,
What
okay.
kind of
Okay.
emotional
Wait.
orientation is that? I'm sorry.
First
Let
of all-
that bigotry die into the ground. Die into the ground.
First of all,
Silverman,
Rabbi Silverman's over. This is Rabbi Gilman. Rabbi Silverman's being a gentleman.
Rabbi Silverman, back me up. It's not Miriam got blamed for the speaking out against Torah, but it's actually not Miriam who was driving it. She was just the woman, and it's always the woman's fault in this generation. Back me up here.
It was another bigot, a different bigot.
So I'm terribly jealous. I come Shabbos morning so you can tell me that I'm wrong. You don't have a right to tell my congregant that she's wrong, right? You know.
She's my friend.
I know. You know. I earned that. She's on Shabbos today. You know. Right? No. All right, we'll get to the bigotry in a minute. But this is a nice midrash. This is a nice way of reading the story. It's a sweeter way of reading it than I'm reading it. I read it as they are completely oblivious to the fact that he's a human being with feelings. They're oblivious. All they want is what they want now, the water, right? And that's why he's going to lose it in a minute,
But their
right?
expression of anger.
No. You're doing it much more generously in a way, which is saying it's the whole community mourning for her, and that's what this is really
There's
about.
different manifestations.
And they're afraid of what this means, that she's gone, because she's been, remember, this is 38 years later. This happened, I'm sorry, I should tell you at the beginning. This is 38 years later. You know how you're watching a movie and it says 38 years later. This is the next generation. The 38 years of the desert have passed already. She's been there for 38 years. Every person except for Joshua, Caleb, Moses, and Aaron, she's been there every day of their lives. She was there when they were born. She was there when they grew up. She was at every bar mitzvah, right? She was at every wedding. She was at every birth. She was there for every moment that these people, and suddenly this leader, one of the three great leaders who has led you through this wilderness, who's been there every day, is gone. And Rabbi Sherry suggests that the community is grieving for her. And their community is scared because she's gone, because they have a sense of what she brought to the community. So this is collective grief. Their longing for the water is not longing for the water. Their longing for the water is their fear of what happens when the person who's been ahead of you, in front of you, and shared your life.
And she's been the activating agent.
And the activating agent of life. We'll come back to Rabbi Gilmans' rage in just a moment. I can hear him. I can feel the heat come. I got to turn the air conditioning. It's coming, right?
You're going to have to hit that later.
We'll do it. We'll get to it. Right. And then what happens is Moses, we're at 885, okay? Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he'd commanded him. And Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, "Listen, you rebels, shall we get water free from the rock?" And he raised his hand and struck the rock twice. Smashed the rock. And out came water. So the water comes. But then God says, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm me, my sanctity in the sight of the people, therefore you'll not lead the congregation into the land that I've given them." You get punished for it. Now, everyone who reads this says, that's not fair. And first of all, you understand, just on a pshat, get to the Midrash, just the pshat, right? You have a man who's grieving for his sister. The community jumps on him, starts whining. He can't hold himself back. And at a certain point, and this is really what the whole book of Bamidbar is about. And it's interesting the way it's spelled. But there are no words. This is the loss of language. This is the loss of a common language in which to share who and what we are. It's all about shouting, screaming, yelling, hitting. There's no common language. So when it comes time to gain water from the rock, of course he doesn't speak. He smashes it because there's no language here. You don't hear me and I don't hear you. We don't speak the same language. We're on completely different worlds. They come to him. They have no regard for his moment. He's just the leader, which means he's an avatar for all of their need. And they scream at him. And he just loses it and whacks the rock. And then God betrays him and says, "You ain't going in. You are also mortal. And because you're mortal, you will not see the end of your dream. You will not experience the end of your dream. You will not see the fulfillment of what you've been working toward." This is the great condition of mortality. I mean, God help, by the way, the person who does see the end of their dream. But this is a guy who's been dreaming big because he's a big man, and he will not see the end of the dream. That's the pshat of the story. Now, Sherry suggests this is something else. This is the community mourning for Miriam. That's a beautiful midrash. That's a different way to understand it. And the unfairness of this strikes all of the commentators. So everyone tries, why can't he go in the land? Why does this disqualify him? For everything Moses did for God, everything Moses gave up for God, everything Moses sacrificed and put forth for this people and for God, why can't he go in? You know, I always imagine every year when I get to this section, that this year God's going to change his mind. All right, you can't go in as the general and as the leader, but I'll tell you what, you can be one of those little old men on the Tel Aviv boardwalk. Anyone ever been to Tel Aviv? Or Netanya is better, or Nahariya is even better. And in Netanya, they have a little boardwalk, and there's all these little old guys sitting there. And I always imagine one of them is Moshe Rabbeinu. There's Menachem and Shlomo and Dudi and Buki and Nuki and Sluki. And Moshe Rabbeinu, and he's playing chess. God says, okay, you're not going to be the leader, but I'll let you sit in Tanya and play chess. But every year you get this and say, you can't go in. You can't go in. Why can't you go in? Mark.
Because the story's not about Miriam.
Yeah.
The story isn't even really about Moshe. The story is about the use of force and what its role is to be in our liberation.
Uh-huh.
And the key to it
Yeah.
is that this is the second version of the same story.
Right.
In Exodus 17,
Right.
there is the exact same story.
Right.
People fetching, no water, hit the rock.
Take the stick.
Take
the stick.
and
Hit the rock. Right.
And he does it, and the water comes out.
Right.
Here, God says, speak to the rock. He hits the rock instead of speaking to it,
Right.
and water comes out.
Right.
And Moshe can't go into the land.
Yeah.
So, my first midrash for a moment was about the waters of Meribah, and that's the name of the place. So what's the difference between the two stories? In one, hit the rock, he did it. The other, speak to the rock, he hits the rock. So what's the difference between the two stories?
Okay.
The difference is Sinai. What separates the two stories is Sinai.
Okay.
Because God's essential move in liberating the people was to say all these uses of force, which began when God said, go tell the people to leave, and they'll leave. And Moshe says, no, it doesn't work that way. I need miracles. I need force. I need the yad chazakah. I need the strong hand.
Right.
The fist.
Right.
Because Pharaoh only understands the fist.
Right.
So fine. So God said, okay, we'll use the fist to get the people out. But at Sinai, I'm telling them the only liberation comes without force. The only liberation that matters, the only liberation that endures, is liberation that does not involve killing someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe doesn't understand that. And that's one version. He doesn't understand it, so he hits the rock. The second version, the one I offered, is that Moses hit the rock intentionally. Because he says to God, so, you think we're done with the Yad Chazakah, but you're wrong. Because you're about to send the people into an armed fort, into a country that is armed,
Okay.
and that is populated. And the only way to liberate this country is by killing some people.
Mm-hmm.
And that involves force, and so I am going to hit the rock to remind you that you can't leave the people. You have to use your force with Joshua and with others to defeat our enemies.
Okay.
This is not a matter of discussion about their holiness or their goodness.
No. It's a different midrash. You don't have to make it not a matter, but it's a great midrash. Now, let me extend your midrash, okay? So, do you ever understand Rabbi Gilmans' midrash? You have two stories. You can find the other one, by the way, if you want to see it. It happens to be it's Exodus 12, which is on page 4. Exodus 17 on page 420. It's exactly the same story, except in story one, it's take the stick and hit the rock. And the second one is take the stick and speak to the rock. What do you need the stick for? Why'd you put the stick in his hand if you don't want him to use it? Hang on a second. So Rabbi Gilmans' midrash, which is brilliant, it's a wonderful midrash, okay, which is, that's the point. The point is, every 3-year-old in nursery school is told, use your words, not your fists. The mark of civilization, of society, is that we can solve conflicts, solve problems using words, not force. I don't have to destroy you. I can disagree with you. I can try to persuade you. We can agree to disagree, but I don't need to destroy you in the process. That's civilization. That's the mark of civilization. And the unraveling of civilization is when you go around whacking people with sticks. That's what God was trying to teach. Rabbi Gilman insists in his second midrash that that was premature. And it still may be premature. I mean, it's a very interesting way of looking at the world, that there are still places that evil exists, and if you want to defeat evil, sometimes you need to have a stick. Rabbi Teddy Roosevelt, Rabbi Teddy Roosevelt understood that sometimes it's necessary. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt was one of the greatest speakers in the world, in American history, but he also understood that sometimes you got to speak softly and carry a big stick. But I want to extend the Midrash. It's a wonderful Midrash. It's a wonderful Midrash. And it's a very, you understand the two different versions, right? It's just wonderful Midrash. But let's go. So if he hits the stick and that's not what God wanted him to do, why'd the water come out? Why doesn't he whack this rock and nothing happens?
Because God agrees.
God agrees what?
That the world still needs force to liberate freedom.
Okay, I'd go the opposite. Can I go the opposite?
Sure.
The opposite is because brutality works as a political tool, but only in the short run. Because it'll work in the short run. All kinds of brutality can work as a political tool. But over time, you end up with the dissipation of society, with the unraveling of society, of civilization. I mean, so we can, but you understand the symbolism? Right? It's a very important thing. Dad, hang on 1 second. Yeah. Real loud. I can't hear it from the back. Thank you. Yeah.
Can that also just show that God would be offended because he's not mad so much about, oh, you hit the rock instead of speaking to it.
Yeah.
But you have showed the community that there is another way to achieve what you want without my help.
Yeah, that's interesting. Several things you said were important. So one of the, if you look at the rabbinic midrash, the long tradition of Jewish interpretation of this story, one of them pointed out, what you just pointed out, was that the sin wasn't hitting the rock. The sin was insulting the people, right? Yeah, they're rebellious, but they're struggling to become not rebellious. So to castigate them, to call them a bunch of rebels, that was the sin. That's number one. Number two is what you said is it looked like it was his own magic trick. It's his own magic trick. It's not a divine act, right? Because if you look at the words again, the words are very interesting. What did Moses say when he smashed the rock? Listen, you rebels, shall we get water out of this rock? And as the great Lone Ranger once said, who's we, Kimosabe? Right? Who gets water out of rocks? God gets water out of rocks. Is the implication here that Moses has some sort of magical power? So you're reading the story very subtly. And you're finding all these different places in which you could attach the idea of that's what he did wrong. And each one of them, as Rabbi Gilmans' Midrash is, each one of them opens up a remarkable set of insights into what it means to be a leader. What does it mean to be a leader? Okay? Especially a religious leader. I mean, a religious leader starts to arrogate to himself God's powers. It's me talking to you, not God. That something strange happens, and that's one of the reasons why Moses gets punished. Very subtle reading. Pop.
You forgot your own midrash.
Go ahead.
Moses was good for getting the people out of Egypt and to the promised land.
Yeah.
Took a Joshua, they take the promised land.
Why?
Because there had to be force. And then Moses had to die because the people would always say, Moses, what would you do now?
All right, so there's two pieces of that. Why was it that Moses was good enough to get them to the promised land but not into the promised land? Why did you need a different guy? Pop says because Joshua was a different character. He was the fighter. He was the general. Okay? And if Moses had stuck around, every rabbi who's ever had an assistant who took over for him understands this, right? If Moses had stuck around, everyone would keep going back to Moses and saying, do you know what he's doing? You know, you never did it that way. What? You know.
By the way, that was your midrash. That was your midrash.
But let's take another way to look at it. Moses is an absolutist. All prophets are absolutists. When you're living in the desert, you can be an absolutist because you're living in an abstraction. When you go live in the real world, you got to make budgets. Anyone here ever made a budget? Anyone here made a budget for a non-profit? Right? They're called non-profits for a reason. I'd like to be very proudly to tell you that Valley Beth Shalom is a non-profit with a vengeance, right? We're fiercely non-profit. which means infinite needs, limited resources, tough choices. Absolutists, prophets can't live with that. You have to learn how to make compromises. You have to learn how to say, we're going to prioritize. You have to learn how to say, we'll do this year, we'll do that next year. You have to learn how to live with half-done jobs because you have infinite needs and limited resources. And Moses would have been terrible had he taken the people in the land because he would have insisted on the infinite needs, but he wouldn't have had the resources to fulfill them. And that was something that Joshua had a whole different mindset, was able to agree to. A different kind of leader for a different kind of task. Yes, please.
So I also think if it wasn't this situation, God would have found another excuse to not let Moses in.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. But then why make him feel bad? You know? Why not give him a gold watch and a dinner and retire him, you know? I had a friend, we have a friend, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rabbi in a big Midwestern city. And when he retired, the congregation gave him a Winnebago and 1,000 gallons of gasoline. What does that say?
But I think the idea is here is you cannot lead with anger. You can lead with wisdom and use force when it's needed, but anger is not.
So this is a very interesting thing. This goes back to Rabbi Gilmans' wonderful Midrash. So there's anger. You can't lead with anger. But sometimes do you have to lead with force that's not anger? But that's one of the hardest things in the world to do, is to be passionate, to be forceful, but controlled. You have to know how to control. Anyone here ever raised a small child? You ever raised your hand to potch the kid and then stopped and said, what am I doing? Or you potched the kid, but you did it in a way that it shocked the kid but didn't hurt them? You know what I'm talking about? You can't hit a kid with anger. And the idea of, sometimes a kid deserves a potch, right? Kid steps into the street. My dad never hit me, but once when I was 3, he did, okay? And what happened was I stepped into the street without holding his hand. And he hit me, he whacked me on the tush, right? Yeah, I'm still hurting. He gives, No, because it was important, because he wanted me, because he understood that that's life-threatening. You don't, but that has to be done out of control. You can't, and that's when you're dealing with passions, you have to be very careful. If you're the leader, passion can't overcome you. It's a very, very wise midrash. Yes, Sherry?
I just can reconcile them all by their rebelling out of the grief for Miriam, my point.
That's your point, right.
And he joins in their grief, and his grief transforms to anger.
Yeah.
And he becomes part of them. And at that point, God says you can't go in because you're no longer a leader separate, able to differentiate.
Okay, you're no longer a leader able to differentiate from the feelings of your people. And anger is one of the things that accompanies grief. Very, very frequently. Right, very. No longer be there. Right, yes. Someone over here had a hand. Yes, all right, please, yes, hi. Wait, hang on. I know, I'm going to try to get everybody. I'm a real Democrat in this sense. Yes.
I think it's beautiful because God wanted Moses to be the one who did 99% of the work, and people they got to liberation by themselves. So unlike other religions where the prophet becomes an idol,
Yeah.
this way it doesn't happen in Judaism. And second thing is we do as parents so much work,
Yeah.
and then we let the kids, like we do for future generations.
Right.
And that is another beautiful thing that Moses didn't make it easier because he left it to the future.
See, that's a beautiful midrash, right? The midrash is a wonderful way to read the story. As a parent, what do I want most in my life? As a leader, what do I want most in my life? I don't need to get to the promised land. But if you tell me that my kids will get there, that's all I need. In fact, that's in some ways a definition. Look, it's a definition of why we got to where we got to, right? This has always been an ethic of our families, launching your kids into the world. This is, part of launching your kids into the world. I mean, how many of our parents and grandparents worked in menial jobs, endless hours, and sent us to college, right? My dad went to 4 colleges vicariously, right? So we say he has 12 college degrees. Because I have 3 brothers, and each of us have doctorates. So, it's 12 college degrees. Because he launched us. He launched us. And he demanded each of us come back and tell him what we learned. Right? That's what a parent most wants out of life. Somebody over here had it. Yes, please. David.
I have a question about back to 881.
Oh, 881. Okay, yeah, I want to go back to that narrative. Okay.
Cow or is it tolerable?
No, it's a cow. Para, it's a female.
So female dies. The guy who's Miriam comes impure.
Yeah,
Miriam dies.
yeah,
Moses becomes impure.
yeah.
What are we to draw from that?
Well, what I'm drawing from that, I was going to come back to this at the end of the talk, is that, but I think that the whole Torah portion is about, I think, all of these wonderful midrashim attach themselves to this Torah portion. It's a suggestive set of stories. But the overall arching narrative here is, in the same way that 3 weeks ago we met the pettiness of the people, then we met their fear, then we met their jealousy and their rebelliousness. Now we're talking about the next challenge of being a human being, which is, what do I do with the fact of mortality and the dreams that I have of my life, the meaningfulness that I attach to my life? How do I reconcile the meaningfulness of life with the fact of mortality? And that's how I read this whole general narrative. Yeah, Michael and then Vlad. I'm trying to get everybody, I promise.
You brought this up just recently, but the difference between, in terms of Moses going to the land,
Yeah.
between governance and being the trail leader on a hike through the desert.
Yeah,
That's one way to look at it.
yeah,
And the other is, a number of years ago, this whole thing about striking the rock bothered me, about why would God even say, what kind of punishment was that?
yeah,
So I went through the whole section from Exodus up until that point,
yeah,
and I found so many instances in which Moses actually misled or misstated what God commanded him to do.
yeah,
And it starts with the very first instance where he says, so God says, tell Pharaoh to let us go 3 days into the wilderness to sacrifice to the Lord.
yeah, yeah.
And what he actually says in Moses, he says that, but then he goes a little further.
Right.
He says, because if we don't, we're going to be punished, and we may die. And it's like he can't just keep it to where it is. He's always got to elaborate.
He's doing his own midrash.
Yeah, and he does that. I think there are 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
he progressed through it.
Lots of characters do that.
Kind of, and at the end, I think God is saying, "Okay, I've had it. We're not doing it. Let's get out of this."
Wait till God reads the Talmud. I mean, if God's frustrated by that, what's God going to do with, milchik and fleshik,
God has disappeared by that.
There's an old joke, God says, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. And Moshe says, oh, 2 sets of dishes, milchik, fleshik, 5 hours in between. God says, no, just don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. He says, no, the butcher shops where meat's $20 a pound more than, and hashkacha with guys with curls. And, no, just don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Oh, you mean God says, okay, fine, do whatever you want. It's a great midrash. It's a great midrash. Yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it. He's not if you can't follow my directions, I don't want you bringing the people into the land. Vlad, please.
So my thought about these parashot is it seems like it's kind of what will break you, what stress will break you.
Yeah.
And in the end, for Moses, what breaks him is the death of his sister, and that's when he loses. Like Rabbi Sherry mentioned, he loses his control, he loses his grounding, his
Okay.
leadership ability,
Yeah.
and his strength.
But I want you to hold that thought for about 4 minutes because I want to show you one more thing. Can I do that? 887. I'll come right back. 1 second, okay? 887. Setting out from Kadesh, the Israelites arrive at Mount Hor. Mount Hor was in the boundary of Edom. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, let Aaron be gathered to his kin. He's not to enter the land I've assigned him because you disobeyed me. Take Aaron and his son to the top of Mount Hor. Strip him of his vestments. And there Aaron shall be gathered to the dead. So unlike Miriam, Moses gets a warning with Aaron. And there's this sort of ceremony. This sort of like dead man walking. I mean, it's this ceremony where they climbed the mountain. Moses and Eleazar came up the mountain. The whole community knew that Aaron had breathed his last. And all the house of Israel bewailed Aaron 30 days. So you got to ask the question, why didn't they mourn Miriam 30 days? I mean, it's an interesting contrast. So what do we have? We have the two most important people in Moses' life have now been taken from him. So not only is this about mortality and the fact of death, but consider the loneliness. These are the only two people in the whole community he could talk to. The only two people who knew the lullabies of their mother. The only two people who understood who he really was inside. Right? And they're gone. And consider the loneliness. Now, just one more little piece, but I promise I'll get everybody else's comments. Right? And now look at what happens next. Look at 889. The Israelites marched on and they encamp at Obot. And now we have the journey. And they're looking for a well. And if you look at the top of 891, Israel now sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites. Amorites, Edomites, Moabites, these are all of the ites. These are all of the people who live on the borders of Eretz Yisrael. We're in the desert. We have to get into Canaan. We have to cross their territory. Okay? How do you cross their territory? Now what's interesting is if you read the genealogies of Genesis, we're related to all these people. Yeah, through Esau and through Ishmael. These are all cousins now. Now you're dealing with mishpacha, right? And there are rules of family, and there are also rules of the desert. The desert, if you ever encounter Bedouins, there's a very, very strict code of rules of passing through, of hospitality. There's very, very powerful rules. If you are thirsty in the desert and wandering aimlessly, and you come across a desert caravan, they will take care of you. They'll give you food and water and protect you. That's their obligation. And you can sue to pass through their land with your flocks. There's rules and laws. But look what happens. Israel sent messengers to Sihon, let me pass through your country. We will not turn off into fields or vineyards. We will not drink water from the well. We will follow the king's highway, El Camino Real. Just the big bells on the side of the 101, right? We will follow the king's highway until we've crossed your territory. But Sihon would not let Israel pass through the territory. Sihon gathered all his people and went out against Israel in the wilderness, and they fought a battle. And this is going to happen 3 times here. It's going to happen twice in this parsha and later on again. So I want to connect all these things together. But first, a couple comments. 1 and 2. Wait, Douglas went first. Yeah, please.
On page 885,
Yeah.
indicates the destructive rock.
Yeah, hit the.
twice.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Tell me why.
The first time.
Because the faucet was stuck, you know.
But the first time.
He's a Jewish man. He doesn't know how to use power tools. Jewish men think Black & Decker is a law firm in Beverly Hills, you know? You put a chainsaw in the arms of a Jewish guy, he tries to play it like an electric guitar. You understand? He doesn't know how to use tools. He's Jewish, right? He knows how to use a phone. He calls a carpenter. He calls a plumber. I'm insulting our men. That's true, though. Go ahead.
No, but in the Shalach it doesn't say that.
Yeah.
So is there any meaning or?
Why, that it hits it twice instead of one? I don't know. Go find it for me, okay?
Yes, once for the first. In
Yeah,
Exodus,
all right.
once-
Maybe it worked once. I'll hit it twice to get more water. I don't know.
No, it's to push you back to the other story.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Push you back to the other story. I don't know. That's what Rabbi Gilmans. It's a good interpretation. Yeah.
You just said he lost the 2 most important people in his life.
Yeah.
He's been married for 40 years.
Yeah, but
You said
she
he was
just-
been married for 39 years. He has adult children, and you're telling us that his siblings are the most important people in his life?
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
Did you-
No, but the Bible has a theory that siblings are the people that shape you. Right? Look, think about Genesis.
Shape you when you're 10.
Think about Genesis.
They shape you when you're 12.
It's a different.
They don't shape you as an adult.
You, yes, because you live in a society which is not sibling culture. But there are cultures which are sibling cultures.
Even when
In
you
many
live 40
cultures,
years with your wife.
in many cultures, when you have a child, if you have a son, you pass your son to your wife's oldest brother. And that uncle is the one who raises your son.
That's Alaska.
Yeah.
In Alaska.
He's the one who takes the kid out and teaches him to drive a Mustang and a stick shift. And You know, but you know, there are sibling-oriented. This is a sibling-oriented society, not a spousal-oriented society. She disappears. Zipporah disappeers from the Torah.
So do his kids.
Yeah, his kids disappear because it's a
What
sib.
kind of dad is he? What kind of
Douglas, don't judge this don't judge this according to your standards. You're a great husband and a wonderful father. I saw your kids last week. They're gorgeous. Now where are they going? They're going someplace.
One's going to Chile.
Yeah, right. It's because they have rich parents and you don't, right? This is a sibling-oriented culture. This is a culture in which your siblings are the shaping influences and the closest, not your spouse. It's a different kind of culture. And just accept it for what it is. It's not our culture. It's not our way of doing things. This is a sibling-oriented culture. Okay? Okay, so now, yes, so Sherry, go ahead. And then Jerry.
Red cow tell us about human imperfection, and what are we supposed to accomplish in our lifetime to get to the
I'm getting there. I'm almost done. 2 minutes, and I'm going to answer all of your life questions. Jerry.
I just wanted to point out, on behalf of my client, God, that God doesn't say it's a punishment.
Yeah.
He just says, therefore.
Well,
Pain.
doesn't it seem like a...
And maybe it's a consequence. Maybe God is really explaining, not punishing or beating up on Moshe, but maybe he's just explaining, look, Moses, I understand
Yeah.
you're human,
Yeah,
but the people may not.
okay,
And therefore,
okay.
as a consequence,
All right.
et cetera, which is not meant to
It's a consequence, not a punishment.
moral failings,
Fair.
it's a consequence of his humanity.
Okay. So, as they say in court, so noted. So noted. Right? I'm coming around. Ronnie.
So Moses hit the rock instead of talking to it,
Yeah,
and for that reason, he wasn't allowed to go into the promised land.
right. Or for the whole, yeah.
That's a pretty severe.
That's what, yeah. Doesn't it seem that way? But that's the question, is what does it mean? What does it teach? Someone back here had a hand up and... Okay, good. All right, let's finish this section together, right? Sichon, the king of the Amorites, says, you can't pass through my land. If you turn the page, the same thing's going to happen again when we get to the Moabites. What does that mean? So now take all the stories together, and what do they mean? Right? Let's work backwards a minute. You can't... Well, that's one of the ways to think about it. That's Rabbi Gilmans' Midrash. It takes a certain amount of force to push back against the evil of the world. Don't think that it can be talked through. I want to go back to my original Midrash. And I write, it's a wonderful way of reading it. You can't get through this world without being touched. Without being touched. You can't get through this world. There's nobody who gets through life without a certain modicum of tragedy, a certain modicum of pain, a certain amount, a certain experience of loss. Whenever loss happens to us, we cry, why me? Which is the right thing to cry, of course, because it's actually saying woe. It's saying, woe is me. But part of the answer to why me is because that's the human condition. Nobody gets through this life without losing. Nobody gets through this image of, I want to pass through your land, I won't touch anything. And I won't let the land touch me. I want to get through this land and I won't disturb a fly. I won't bend a dandelion. That's not life. You can't get through this life. There isn't a life where anyone lives through life and without a certain degree of tragedy and loss and a great deal of pain. That's the human condition. That's what this part is teaching. That's the human condition. Now, the whole Torah portion is about that. And if you think that there's some magic potion that can wash over you and take away all the tough things and life will only be flowers and candy, go find me a red cow. It's as unlikely as a red cow because there is no magic potion that does that. The human condition is inherently vulnerable. It's risky to be a human being. And any time you reach outside of the tightly drawn circle of selfhood and you say to another, I love you, I care for you, I believe in you, anytime you believe in an ideal, in a mission, in a project, in a cause, you're going to get hurt. There is no love in the world without loss. There is no idealism without disillusionment and disappointment. There is no reaching into the world without getting whacked on the way back. That's the human condition. Moses loses the two people, most important to him, and he grieves for them. But now here's my big question. This is Sherry's question. What does he do next? He had every right at the end of this Torah portion to sit himself down and say, I'm done. You took Miriam, you took Aaron, take me. Don't make me go all the way to the border of the land. Just take me now. Take me now. That's what he should have done. That's what most of us would do. Most of us have sat down at one point or another in our lives and said, I'm finished. I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. Most of us would have done that. What does Moses do next? He picks himself up and moves forward. He picks himself up and moves forward. How? How does he do that? That's greatness. He picks himself up and says, Afal pichein, v'lamrot hakol, even though I now know how vulnerable to be a human being, even now I know how painful life is, even though I know I've lost, I can't seem to find my way, and yet he picks himself up and goes. And what's really interesting is as you start reading these stories, you realize they're going to do something they haven't done in a long time. They're going to fight. The people picks themselves up, right? They marched on and went up the road to Bashan and King Og of Bashan. And in the tradition, King Og is a giant. Og sounds sort of like a giant, doesn't it? Right? He's one of the Anakim. He's one of those frightening mythical creatures the spies saw. King Og is a giant. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of a bunch of Jewish guys. Right? With all of his people, it came out of Edrei to engage them in battle. God said, don't fear. I'm giving them to you. And they fight. And they win. Moses rises up. And not only does he move forward, he leads his people into battle and beats this frightening thing. The thing they were most afraid of 2 weeks ago, they now wipe out. And now they're going to move forward. How do you move forward after you've lost a person who means the world to you?
But everyone moves forward after you lose someone.
No, that's not true. I wish that were true. No, only blessed people do.
You really don't have a choice.
That's true, but people do. But what is the inner resource that says yes to life in the face of death? Yes to causes and missions and projects and ideals, and to love even in the face of its vulnerability and its risk and its inevitable tragedy. That's the greatness here. That's the great story of this portion. The great story of this Torah portion is there ain't no red cow water that's going to get you out of this. If you want to move forward, it's what Mel just said. You're going to have to find it inside. And that's the greatness of this story. Shabbat Shalom. Dr. Bob, thank you.
Thank you.
You see, we need to figure out a different system because everyone wants to share the conversation, so we have to get like a ceiling.
I want to say thank you, and I'll leave you to
Thank you. I hope you're well.
How about if we had a couple of other microphones?
Yeah, some.